Hello, my name is Richard Heisman, American citizen from San Francisco, USA. And now I live here in Myanmar. I've been here many, many times starting 1981, all the way back then. And I've been in Arakan, Rakhine State, many times starting 1996. Okay, I'm going to talk about the conflict there between the Rakhine Buddhists and the Bengali Muslim Rohingya people. One thing to note here is that this conflict has been going on for a very long time, basically since World War II era. And more recently, there's been 3 major attacks by the Bengali Muslim Rohingya in 2012, 2016, and then only 10 months after that, 2017. The 2017 attack was quite amazing in that it was what should be called the world's largest terrorist attack in history. At that time, August 25th, 2017, surprise attack in the early morning started against almost 150 targets. These were villages and army bases. There were about 30 army bases attacked, police outposts, army bases, and then also about 80 or so villages attacked that very morning. And some other villages were attacked the next day because they didn't get the message quick enough the night before. The reason why it should be noted as the world's largest terrorist attack is that the numbers are staggering. There were 150 or so targets attacked, each by hundreds of organized Rohingya men and boys. And they did not have sophisticated weapons. Some did have assault rifles, but most of the weaponry was clubs and knives and machete type instruments. It was all done by surprise, and if you think about it, you think about 911 in New York when that terrorist act happened. That was considered very big because it was like 19 hijackers, 5 different targets, etc. But this was 150 or 160 or so targets, and actually about 100,000 or so assailants against all these targets. And many villages were affected, attacked. People were killed by the Muslims, hacked to death usually by long knives. Some were shot. And then for about 2 weeks, it was a very tense situation as the Muslims were continuing to attack and burn villages and so on. The army, the Burmese army called the Tatmadaw, had to interfere, of course, as the army of any country would have to do. All countries have a force that is meant to repel invaders and bring, stop the violence that's happening. Well, here you had Tatmadaw going in to chase the rebels out or eliminate them. It was against the army action was against the Bengali Muslim Rohingya people. And that took a couple weeks to do. Now, this similar type of attack happened in 2012 as well as 2016. All 3 of these incidents, clearly, if you look at all the facts, were started by the Muslims and perpetrated. They had plans that they had made using the mosque as their headquarters. The mosque in the villages was very responsible for the brainwashing that happened against the people. We have collected many interviews and statements from prisoners, Muslim prisoners who were caught and debriefed and so on. And they all state that their mosque and their Malawi is the Islamic holy man. The Malawis brainwashed and indoctrinated the people to to carry out the attacks with the goal was clearly to take over, to expel all Buddhists, all Hindus, the Hindu minority there as well, and other tribal people, expel all non-Muslims. So many interviews had the prisoners or the interviewees said this, so that you had, in the mosque, you had the leaders of the mosque teaching people about the goals. And the goal was to eliminate all and then have that land break off from Burma or Myanmar, break off and become an autonomous state, Islamic state, Sharia law. That's what they wanted, and that's what they say they wanted. A couple things leading to this. Just before the 2017 attack on August 25th, just before that, the leader of ARSA, and ARSA is the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, terrorist group of Bengali Muslim Rohingya people. Just before that, the leader had his phone tapped and he did not know. Ataullah was the leader of ARSA. And there were 3 important phone calls that just happened the day before the attacks. 2 of them were to a Pakistan general, and 1 of them was to an ISIS commander in Syria. These were incoming calls from them to the leader. And the messages translated were such like, congratulations in advance on your attacks. The Pakistan general wanted the attacks moved up. They had been planned for like maybe a week later, but he said, we have to attack tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And so the plans actually were to have even more targets, but the plans were changed when the leader became afraid of defectors and so on, giving information about this and preventing it. All of this action had genocidal intent. This is a very important phrase, genocidal intent. That means the intention of committing genocide. The Bengali Muslim Rohingya people wanted to commit a genocide against the people, the non-Muslims in that area. But they failed, and so we can call it genocidal intent. Now, we know that the Bengali Muslim Rohingya are saying that they are the target of genocidal intent, but that is not true. If you look at all of the evidence that exists, and I have a lot of it, they had, the Bengalis claimed genocidal intent against them, but there was no genocidal intent. If the Burmese army, the Tatmadaw, wanted to commit a genocide, it easily could. It could drive all those people across the border and or kill them all or something. It could do that, but it didn't. It was doing the kind of police work that any country has to do when somebody invades like that. More about global genocidal intent soon. Let's see. Okay, now we should look at the history of, briefly look at the history behind this. Let me get one paper here. Okay, so the history there, back in 1942 during World War II, there was a big massacre, the Mongda Butitang massacre. And that is when many Buddhists were killed. Maybe 30,000 Buddhists were killed. 100,000 Buddhists had to flee. 400 or more villages, Buddhist villages, were set on fire. Even British officials at that time said, wow, the fires, the burning villages and everything, the Muslims are taking over from the Buddhists, and the Buddhists have no future here if this continues. These are quotes from British observers at that time. And then there was like an underground war then between the Mujahideen, as they called themselves. Mujahideen is an Arabic word, The Mujahideen guerrillas fighters carried out a maybe 15-year campaign, and back and forth fighting. And then in 1960s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, there were various attempts by the Bengali Muslims to attack and drive out the Buddhists once again and again and again and again. And then finally 2012, 2016, and 2017 attacks. In all of these cases, the perpetrator was the Bengali Muslim Rohingya, not the other way around. The Buddhists did not ever start fighting. The Buddhists wanted to live in peace and freedom there. And the Hindu minority and the ethnicities like Tet people and Miro people, Kami and Tet. Let's talk about mass graves. After 2017, Bengali Muslims screamed about major massacres in places like Tulatoli, Gudarpian, Mongnu, Indin. These are places that I went to. I went to each one of these places where there was a supposed massacre and found no evidence supporting that. And what I was doing was going to villages around that massacre site. So the villages within just a mile or two of that, and interviewing people there. People had horrific stories, and they would say what's happening, but nobody heard of a massacre happening there. The only massacre that is true turned out to be the massacre of about 100 Hindu people in Kamansake village. And that was a massacre that we did find mass graves with dozens of bodies piled on them. Men, women, children, babies, everything. And then there were some survivors of that massacre, the Kamansake massacre. The Hindu survivors were girls who were about 20 years old, beautiful, and they were forced to watch their fathers and husbands and so on killed right in front of them, their kids too. And they were then forced to march with the Bengali Muslims back into near Bangladesh, and then forced to marry some old Muslim man and so on. But these survivors were rescued, and then we have their stories too about the brutality that happened. So of all of the mass grave issues, only the mass murder of the Hindus is real. And then, by the way, okay, I was allowed into Rakhine State 3 times with my own team that I picked to assist me, about 5 guys, driver, etc. And I was the only foreigner allowed to do this. One thing I was doing also was translating the YouTube videos that ARSA put out, ARSA or like-minded people put out. I had a translator who was Muslim himself. He was Muslim, but he hated Islam, and he was very willing to document the atrocities and very willing to translate anything. And since he grew up knowing all of the intricacies of the language, it was very good. We translated so many things. We translated 350 videos from YouTube, all showing ARSA in action or so on like that. For example, videos taken by themselves, by them, the Muslims, taken to show, just to show among them. But we got the videos off of off of dead killers and so on. We got their phones, and often we were able to break into them and get the videos of them putting on black hoods and shirts and pants and then marching with knives to a Buddhist village in order to kill everyone. And they did that. We have hundreds of videos of that. And what you hear is, you hear Bengali language. Now, Myanmar people do not know Bengali language. So then you don't know what they're saying. But when I translate them and put subtitles there, then the meaning is horrific. What you hear there and what you see then really adds up to a horrible brainwashing that's going on. Let's see. Okay, now let's talk about the computer that I got seized from a Rohingya ARSA leader, Rashid Ullah. Rashid Ullah was his name. He was the head of the RSO for a time. That was the Rohingya Solidarity Organization. And we broke into this computer that he had. He did not know about passwords or something, but we snatched the computer, and it turned out to have over 700 videos on it. And these were videos that we carefully examined and documented, translated, and posted. These are videos taken in the Mayu Mountains at secret training camps that they had. The Mayu Mountains are the main mountains that are in that area. And videos taken at a secret base in Saudi Arabia where the Bengali insurgents were training, clearly in Saudi Arabia. And there's many links between those two areas, Mayu Mountain videos and the Saudi Arabia videos. That is startling evidence. That is very, very hot evidence to use. So that seized computer had so much information. It also had many pages or videos of information about high explosives, C4, C3, petan, and other explosives and poisons. It had instructions about how to make poisons, how to make bombs, how to make bullets, how to do everything, how to fight with knives, how to take hostages, how to do anything bad you can think of. These were on the videos from that computer. Okay, another subject is that in Myanmar there are other Muslim groups of people. There are Pante Muslims and Kaman Muslims, and then there's the Bengali Muslims who call themselves Rohingya, but that's to be contested. The Kaman Muslims and Pante Muslims are both equal citizens, and they have been citizens since the founding of the nation. They make no trouble. That's the main thing. These other Muslim group populations in Myanmar, they don't make any trouble. They don't agitate for their own land, etc. It is only the Bengali Muslims that fight. They have never been at peace in their corner of the state there. They've always wanted to break away. And they fail, and they fight. Pante Muslims originally came from China, Chinese Muslims that came across the border. And then Kaman Muslims, their heritage is from Persia from a long time ago. The Bengali Muslims harken back to Bangladesh areas, which, when Bangladesh was part of India, was called East Bengal. And so Bengali, the Muslims come from there. But the Muslims currently in Myanmar, many of the Bengali Muslims try to convince the authorities that they are actually Kaman Muslims, which they are not, because the Kaman Muslims, are free, are much more viable than than Bengali Muslims. So the bottom line is Bengali Muslims have forever been kind of a problem population, creating problems, agitating for autonomy, etc., etc. Another thing I notice in Rakhine State, or called Arakan, the older name for the kingdom, is that the land is just littered with ruins, Buddhist ruins, and of course the huge mega ruin of Ra'u, which is one of the largest Buddhist cities, ruined cities on earth. And then, but anywhere else you go, you're almost tripping over statues and pagodas and so on from the past. However, all around there's virtually no ruins of Muslim people. There's no archaeological evidence. There is a tiny bit, yes. We do acknowledge that there was a Muslim minority in that area for a long, long time, but that's what it was, a Muslim minority. There was also a Chinese minority, an Indonesian or Sumatra minority, a Cambodian minority. There was a Christian minority, and so on. So we don't say that there were no Muslims historically there. There were Muslims, but a very small minority, and that's it. I also interviewed hundreds of people there, and my interviews with the film interviews with subtitles, so you can understand it, are very, very good. I interviewed, of course, Buddhist people there, but I made a point to interview even Muslims, and interviewed the ethnic minorities like Hindu, Myo, Tet, Diagnet, Khmer, indigenous people. And like I said, and I interviewed Muslims, and most of the Muslims that I interviewed were actually not supportive of the Bengali insurgency. And special interviews I've done with very old men who remember the World War II days and those massacres and the mayhem going on like around 1942 up until 1950. I have a dozen interviews of that, and those are very revealing to read what these people went through in the 1940s. I think maybe we're finished.